Okay then, welcome to the last session of the day. My name is Peter SZENDROI. This is not what I will talk about. Well, it is, but I will talk about virtual patching. That was the theme for today. At the end of my session, we will do the draw for the iPad mini, which many of you have registered in our booth. So stay tuned, stay awake, and then you will be eligible for the draw as well. So, sales guys are going to kill me if I don't show you one slide about Trend Micro, so please allow me. Trend Micro is born in server security. That's the first thing we ever did. 25 years ago, our first product was protecting servers. And we do have a leading position within the server security space, which we have carried on into the virtualization security space as well. And hopefully the next few minutes, the next half hour, will show you why. First, a little word about the problems that security actually give us in the virtualization space. So this is like a picture everybody wants to see. We start with almost no virtualization first, doing physical servers only, and then at the end, we are somewhere in the cloud, meaning we have no idea what we're running on, just abstract resources somewhere. And this is always nice and handy, but then comes security. And it turns out security introduces different complexity problems that wasn't there before. And all of a sudden, we see an increased complexity from operational side, which reduces the willingness of moving on and having more and higher virtualization ratio. We see threats being more and more diverse, and the yesterday scheme with building, the castle ID, you build a perimeter security around your computers, your data center, all of a sudden not being relevant. We're mixing different security level machines in the same data center, sharing same infrastructure, and we get more diverse needs on top of this. Anyone like patching? Really? The thing is, we could run Windows probably 365 days a year, 24/7. We would never need to reboot it. We can replace every piece of hardware. We can replace literally everything, except for one thing. We need to do security patching. Last year, this is just numbers from 2012, we are looking at 7 critical patches, critical security patches every working day. Now, this is not operating system patches, obviously. It's different software patches. You're not using all the software. But these are the numbers we see. So the potential of patching is almost infinite. You could spend your whole day just doing patching. And we're trying to help with this in a way. Another problem that occurs in virtual environments is a lot of dormant systems. Now, is there anyone here who actually has hands-on with your vCenter in your organization? There are a few? Okay. Now take that hand, put it on your heart, and say, I only have production machines on my vCenter. Okay? Nobody's doing that, right? One did. There's one liar in the room. That's okay. So we know this. There will be tons of machines out there. They're not really production machines. They are powered off right now, but I will try something, test maybe, do something. Do you update security on those just as well as you update security on your production machines? Are they properly patched? Is your antivirus, anti-malware updated to the last minute? Of course they're not. The second you power them on, they will be a security problem. If you take your template and you make a new machine, you clone it or whatever you do with your machines, the template is not updated. The first thing you do with your new, fresh machine is to update security. It takes time and it creates a protection gap. Meanwhile, your machines are not safe. Administration is another part. Not only provisioning VMs, then you need to put a security agent onto every VM to make sure it's protected. Right? These need continuous maintenance. reboot sometimes. You have security patterns that could be antivirus, anti-malware patterns or IDS patterns. Needs to be rolled out, sent to every VM if it's powered on. This causes maintenance. We don't really like that, do we? Another thing, in all traditional AV systems or anti-malware systems, there are these background scans going. And they're more or less stupid. You try to do it nighttime, you know. We run at 3 o'clock in the morning when there's no load on the system. We try. Then all of a sudden, everybody does it at the same time, and your entire data center comes to a complete halt. It's not nice and pretty when everybody does it in its own pace. Remember, these individual VMs there, they look around and say, 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody's working. So the word is empty. Well, maybe the next guy is working like crazy because he's doing a backup job, or maybe the other one is doing batch jobs in the morning. The guy in the middle doesn't see this and steals I/O, steals memory, steals CPU from your system. So you get resource contentions. You could actually have machines go much, much slower. So what we do in Trend Micro, we offer a product we call Deep Security, which is designed specifically to protect virtual environments. Now, having said that, virtual environments is all I'm going to talk about today. We do have, though, versions that can run on physical or on cloud solutions just as well. But I will now focus just on the virtual part. First, a look back, the old way. For every VM, we install some sort of agent. One or more agents. One is doing firewall, one is doing intrusion prevention, one is doing anti-malware, right? And all this need maintenance of all kinds. Not a very efficient way to work, really. And they don't have any insight in what the hypervisor is doing. They all think, well, Windows Server has Windows Server, what's the difference? Well, there is difference, obviously. The extra resources we had in the physical world, where we could look around and say, hey, my server is doing nothing, let's do some background scans or let's download patterns. All of a sudden, that extra space is stolen by the other guy next to you. So what is the option? Instead of installing something on every VM, we install one security appliance. This is just one more VM. One virtual machine gets added to each ESX. That virtual machine, the virtual security appliance, the guy there obviously, will do the protection for every VM. This is impossible, you say. No, it's not. The reason we can do this is that we integrate into the hypervisor using APIs, and through those, we can do the protection. So what happens in the first scenario, let's say over here, the middle guy, you push out a firewall rule that stops your management server from talking to your client. These things have happened. All of a sudden, you can't talk to your machines, right? You can't update the rule, you can't remove it, or maybe you got an antivirus update, sorry, you have an antivirus update that goes bad. Of course, Trend Micro would never do that, but others may, right? How do you roll back? You may actually need to touch every VM to roll it back. Now, we didn't do anything on the VMs, did we? This guy, we don't need to talk to this guy. We just roll it back on the security appliance and you're done. Okay? So whatever craziness we do, we only need to roll back on the security appliance. So this is a way to maximize both your performance and your return on investment by giving a ton of benefits. So first, before I go into the benefits, this is not just an antivirus solution, intrusion prevention. It's the whole suite of features we can do for your agent Leslie. So you get higher density, obviously, because we're using resources a lot more efficient. We're optimizing your resources. Now, this is a very interesting thing people don't think much about. When you install a security software on your VMs, where does it take its CPU power from? The answer is from production. Now, the resources you give a VM is supposed to be for production, not for security. You agree with it? I like you nodding there. Go ahead. Okay? Now here, security is in a different resource. This resource pool has nothing to do with the resource pool on the others. So when I do a background scan, the limit of how much resources I can steal from your ESX is set by vCenter for that security appliance. Very easy. You want to do full scans daytime? No problem. That's a different resource pool. Management is easier. I guess you can just understand from what I've just describing that it's a lot easier with your management since we're not touching every VM. And finally, we get stronger security. So are we more intelligent? Are we more powerful in finding things? Not really. But there are a few things that we are. First of all, if you have a virus or a malware that gets a foothold on your machine, what's the first thing it does? Any guess? Disable your antivirus. That's the first thing it tries to do. Wait a second. There is no antivirus. There's nothing to disable, which is pretty nice, right? So forget about that. The second thing, you know what the biggest reason that you will get a virus? Because you forgot to install your antivirus. All those dormant servers, test machines and everything, will not have it installed or not have it updated. Now, we can make automated rules that whenever a machine is installed, a new machine pops up in vCenter, we automatically apply rules to it. There will be no machines in your vCenter that are not protected. You have a mixed environment with several administrators. You will have to make sure that each and every one of them are having proper antivirus installed, they are patching their systems, and so on and so forth. Hey, wait a second. They don't have to do nothing. We can do all this for them. We can do protection from the hypervisor layer. So, oh yes, we can assure that this will be a much secure system as a whole. So how is the magic done? And this is where the magic comes in. The bottom, the blue part, that's just your regular, normal vSphere environment. What we're adding in, well, we're not adding it in, but what you will need to add in is vShield endpoint. As you all may know, from vSphere 5.1, vShield endpoint is no longer an extra cost. So go ahead, put it on if you need it. Okay? So we're adding vShield endpoint into your ESX, and to control it, you add the vShield manager. This is all VMware stuff. On the top left, we add Deep Security Manager. That's our management point. And for each ESX, you add the security appliance. This is where the work gets done. Now, the interaction to the VMs is done purely through APIs, which is very good news. We don't even have a network connection to the guest VMs. We don't talk to them. We don't communicate to them. There's no communication you can break, because there is none. We simply communicate with the hypervisor. Going back to the security modules. Now, generally speaking, if you have a random server, what would be the first security feature you would install? You're thinking, scratch my head, I need to put some security on this. What's the number one thing? Slow starters, okay. I'd make another question. If it's a client, what's going to be the first thing you install? Now I'm going to walk over there just to piss him off. Sorry? Yes. For any client, you would start putting on your antivirus, right? You put antivirus and maybe something to check for web traffic. You see the two guys in the middle? Antivirus, web reputation. Clear and easy. For VDI, that's the one to put on it. Straight on. How about servers? Do you normally surf from your servers? You sit there and browse, download stuff? Facebook? Not likely, right? The one most important security feature you should have on your servers is a good firewall and good patching. The two most important things you can do to keep security up. The last two, log inspection, integrity monitoring, well, that's for compliance. It's great features. You know, the integrity monitoring makes sure that nobody tampers with your system directories, no one adds startup things to your Windows system. That's great, and everybody should use it if you ask me, but if you're on a limited budget, I see people being under compliance needs choosing those modules. But for servers, really, a good firewall and a good patching system is the first thing you do. Because a server, why do we have servers? Because they give service to something, right? It could be DNS, done. Web, done. And so on. You've got servers for everything today, right? We have more servers than employees soon, right? And they're doing something useful. The firewall makes sure to hide everything that is not used and only expose what's intended. Very easy. That's the main job of the firewall. There's a ton of other jobs as well. That's the main job of a firewall. Having done that, let's look into the actual traffic coming in. Even if it's a DNS server, there's been tons of DNS exploits out there that you need to put your DNS servers out and someone can just take over and own those machines, regardless of how much antivirus you have installed. So we're looking for exploit rules. So exploits. We call them exploit rules. And that's fine. This is all about something we have seen in the past. We can recognize it. We can protect against it. The next are the vulnerability rules. So there is a vulnerability out there. Maybe there is a patch out there, maybe not. Maybe there is a patch, but right now you can't patch your systems. You're under 24/7 requirements. You may be able to patch it in a few days, in a week or two, but not today. So what do? We put a vulnerability rule on the network layer, and we stop the traffic that would trigger your vulnerability. And you can do your patching in the weekend or 2 weeks from now when everything is calmed down. That is what we call virtual patching. Obviously, we're not playing with Windows files, we're not replacing DLLs, it's not really patching. But on the hypervisor layer, we're doing a virtual patch, which means stopping the traffic that triggers the vulnerability. And you can move on with your production. The last one is smart rules. Smart rules can cover several vulnerabilities or can actually cover things that you can't easily patch. My favorite example is cross-site scripting vulnerability. For anyone who doesn't know this, a cross-site scripting vulnerability is an idiot who wrote your web application, and now there's a straight hole in there. You can't ask for a patch from Microsoft or Apache or somewhere else because they didn't do the screw-up. It was a developer or a developer tool that allows this. So what do you need to do? You need to rewrite your web application, which is, of course, costly and may cost consultancy time. You need to get someone in. Meanwhile, you will be open for attacks. So you can put your smart rule on that would check for cross-site scriptings or SQL injections, those kind of things. So there's tons of smart rules for this. Sorry, before moving on. Now, sometimes people think that we just patch Windows or something. Not at all. It's not only Windows, it's also Linux, HPUX, AIX, and it's not only operating system patches. So a lot of application patches as well. There's a few examples listed there, what we do patch, but it's a ton of things that we do patch. And yes, we do patch some antivirus vendors as well, because they also leave vulnerabilities sometimes. A good example, RDP, a little over a year ago, there was a bug in RDP that allowed you to crash any server. So if you had RDP access to a server, you could kill it. Smack. Which is a bad day in the office, right? Because we all have RDP to our servers. That's sort of part of the point, right? You can't just switch it off. Maybe you don't even have firewalls preventive allowing you to switch it off. Now, we saw the actual exploit 4 hours after Microsoft did release the bulletin for this. But then already our deep security customers were protected. The security patch, the virtual patching took care of this. So how many rules are there? Well, a few thousand, of course. I just mentioned it's about 2,000 new rules every year. So there's going to be a few thousand rules out there. How do you know which rules to apply? Sounds like a new job you could get yourself, right? Now, luckily, we solved this with recommendation scanning. Recommendation scan is running on your machine, not only checking for operating system, system versions, patches, only applications installed and patches for those, and gives you a recommendation you should apply these rules. Once you do patch your servers, it will tell you, remove these rules. And yes, you can have it do it automatically. So you can automatically put on those rules that you need, and you can take them off. A little word on the performance side. We have a new cool feature which allows us to do a scan cache over the ESX. So specifically, if you have a VDI solution where most hosts or most clients do exactly the same thing, they all serve Facebook, right? That's all they do all day. Then each file needs to be scanned only once on an ESX and not scanned by every machine. So if you do a full scan of your clients, the first client will take time, the rest will go snap, 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 because they look almost exactly the same. The management is, of course, central for all these modules. One simple management, easy drill down. It's very strong integration, not only into vCenter. You can have it pick up information from vCloud, from Amazon, Active Directory, and connect back to your SIEM system. I mentioned we could automate much of the security done here. So we can trigger on things happening in vCenter, creating new machines, moving them into a folder, or anything like that. We can automate much of the security here. For large environments, for vCloud environments, you can install it in a multi-tenant mode. Multi-tenant meaning you will have one management console for your entire infrastructure, but your customers can see separate slots into it, and they can manage their own security if they need to, without seeing anyone else. And whatever we don't integrate good enough for you guys, there's a RESTful API to allow further integration into this. So with that, I want to summarize really the very good, not only features, but the values that we can provide any VMware virtualization environment on this. So I think we earned that first spot. We earned the first place in server security, and we're going to stay there on top. We've been recognized also by VMware. They chose us the Technology Alliance Partner of the Year, which of course we are very proud of, where VMware introduces more and more functions against security. We were the first vendor to meet them and start providing proper security for those APIs. So we'll continue to have that spot. You want to see this live? I got colleagues out there. They have a demo station, and ask them to show a demo on specifically the stuff I've been talking about the virtual patching specifically. With that, I will hand over for a short draw of an iPad mini. Sorry, unless there was any questions, of course. Really? No questions, that's okay. You can, yes?
I thought in the slide there is only S6, but does it support S6i?
Yes, yes, yes. So the question was, I only wrote ESX on the hypervisor. Does it support ESXi? Of course it does, yes.
And I do have a question for you, Peter. Does deep security works on Microsoft or other?
Good question. So there are more hypervisors out there than VMware, right? Now, we're not going to say this loud on a VMware event, but we know it's true. Does it work on those hypervisors as well? Well, as soon as those other vendors give us APIs, as VMware has done, VMware has provided APIs for security which we can program against. The others haven't. So unfortunately, there's no way we could do the same tricks without getting the APIs first. You can use all these security features, but you would need to install an agent on the VMs. Yeah, sure.
Regarding Microsoft products, if Microsoft Exchange is used, is it still protected with external, with this separate machine, or do I have to use some agents?
Yeah. So the question is, say if my VM is an Exchange server, right? So would this be the AV needed for the entire Exchange server? And the answer is no. The reason is that Exchange doesn't store its data as files, it stores it as a database. And we don't look into the actual database layer, we look on the file layer. So this would protect all the files on your Exchange machine, but it wouldn't look into the database, actually looking into the, what's called the email part. Because email is not even a file, it's going to be in the database. So the answer is no. You would still need a specific Exchange protection for that. So, well, so the requirement for the security appliance? Oh yeah, sure. There are some rough recommendations on how many VMs you could protect with a normal security appliance. I think roughly for up to 50, 60 VMs, we say 2 gigabytes of memory to it. And then we need a little more memory to make sure to cover more machines. I think with 8 gigs, we've done installs with the Protecting Lab up to 300 VMs on the same. That's mainly in VDI situations we see that. But that would roughly be. Sorry, I'm coming over this. Acoustic is not that good. Okay.
How antivirus or client-based antivirus can interact with virtual desktop environment?
So,
not with servers, but for with users.
yeah, oh, okay, now I get it, I think your question was the following, and verify me if I'm wrong. So, if I have virtual desktops, I install nothing on the client, and there is a virus coming on, how does the user know? That is your question? Yes, good question. So for VDI scenarios, there is what we call a notifier agent. That is something you can add onto a VDI client. The only purpose is to actually open a window to say, you were just infected. Okay? It's nothing you need to update, doesn't need any maintenance. If you want to see it, there you go. Yes, there's a notifier agent. We hope to see that feature coming through the APIs, but not yet. So you have a notifier agent for that. Good question, thank you. That's it? Oh, good.
Sorry, how flexible the solution is. For example, can we create a unique rule for some machines?
So the question is, if I have a ton of machines, a data center, I think the largest data centers we have 10,000 security appliances. So you can just run the math on how many VMs, tons of them. How can we make different rules for different VMs? So obviously, as in every solution, you want to see VMs like in big chunks, and you say, these have a specific policy. Right? So you want to make policies for your VMs. Policies are fully hierarchical. So you can have a parent policy. Let's say all Windows machines do this. A better example. All Windows client operating systems should have antivirus enabled. Then you may have a different policy for XP and for Windows 7. That's a good example. Then you can have a top-level policy saying, we're all going to run antivirus, and then you're going to make different exclusions for XPs and for Windows 7. At the bottom level, you could do any level or in the hierarchy and inherit downwards. In the bottom level, you can go to the individual VM and say, and for you, my friend, we're going to override everything and do something different. And it goes for every individual setting. So for if you want to change one little small setting and everything else is inherited, that's perfectly fine. If you move the machine, like DRS or manually vMotion it around, the rules follow the machine wherever it goes. So it's very flexible. Okay, we're on overtime now. You do the drawdown.